Let me share my screen. So yesterday we plotted two graphs. So today we'll go ahead with more questions. So we plotted this the graph of this function y is equal to 3 sine x plus 7 cos x, and also the graph 2x squared minus x minus 4. So like I said, they are exactly from the past questions. So we'll go on with question 3. So question 3 says copy and complete this table of value for the relation y is equal to 2x squared minus x minus 2. So to complete the table, what you need to do for this range of values, so you start from -4. So in the question, the table was given this way, so it's now left for you to fill up for -4 and the rest values that are missing. So for -4, what you need to do, just input -4 squared. -4 squared gives you 16. 16 times 2 gives you 32. Then you have minus times -4, that gives you +4. So that's 32 plus 4. And then remove -2, so that gives you the value here. So if you do it correctly, this is what you arrive at. So 32 plus 4 minus 2 gives you 34. So there's a negative sign here, it was omitted. When x is 1, you have 2 minus 1, that's 1, and 1 minus 2, that gives you -1. So I want to believe nobody has an issue with the table of values, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we can go on. So then plotting the graph. So when x is, you just, now the scale they say we should use, they said on the x-axis we should use the scale 2 centimeter to 1 unit. So I told us 2 centimeter is just the big box, which is 10 lines. So 10 lines represent 1 unit. So on the x-axis we start with 1, 2, 3 like that. Then on the y-axis, same thing, 2 centimeter to 5 units, meaning we start with 5. So as you can see, 10 lines here represent 1 unit. And then on the other side, we have -1, -2, -3, and so on. Then same thing here, we have +5, 10, 15 like that. So I hope the scale is clear, how we get the scale. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So plotting all the points, this is what we have. When x is -4, we have that y is 35. So that's why we have this. When x is -3, I think we have that y is 19. So how do I locate 19? Yesterday we were talking about how to know what one line represents. For example, 19 is not on this graph, but what we know is that on the y-axis, 10 lines represent 5 units. So what will one line represent? One line will just be 5/10, which gives us 0.5. So on the y-axis, each line is 0.5. That means 2 lines represent 1 unit. So if I want 19, 2 lines after 15 gives me 16. 2 lines after that gives me 17. 2 lines after that gives me 18. And then 2 lines after that gives me 19. So this is 19. That's why I have here to be 19. So like we said, once you have your scale given, you can always find out what one line is. Then same thing, -2, y is 9. We have that. When x is -1, y is 1. So 1 is represented by 2 lines. When x is 0, y is 1, 2. Y is -2. When x is 1, y is -1. When x is 2, y is this is 4. When x is 3, y is, this is 11, 12, and is that 12? So that was how each point is gotten. So is there a problem? Do we understand this? Can we move on?
Yes, ma'am. You understand?
Okay. So please, like I said, your table of value is very important. If you don't get the table correctly, then of course your graph can come out correctly. And please follow the scale. Whatever scale the question says, that should be what you should use. Then the second part of the question says, on the same axis, draw the graph of y is equal to 2x plus 3. Now they told you to draw this graph. Nobody told you the range of value, but you know for the initial one, the range of value is -4 to 4. You could decide to use that. So if we use that, or you use less number, since nobody specified, they won't penalize you. So we have 2x, we have 3, and then we get the y value. So the x value, we could start with -4, -3 like that. I could use 1, 0, since it's going to be a straight line, no problem. 0, 2, and maybe 3. So 2x will just be -8, -6, 2, 0, 4, and 6. I hope you understand what I'm doing. 2x means that I use the x value above to multiply 2, and then the 3 remains the same. So if I add this up, this gives me -5, this gives me -3, this gives me 5, this gives me 3, this gives me 7, and then this gives me 9. So I'll use this value for y to draw this graph y equal to 2x plus 3, but they set on the same axis. That means that after drawing the curve, I will now draw this line. Is this clear?
Ma, please, is it for
Yes.
all the cases that we'll be asked to draw this, then we'll use the values for x, for yes, for x, all the x value to get the y.
Yes, but I was saying you may not need to use all the x values since it's just going to be a straight line. Like you see, when I was forming this, I omitted -2 and -1. So you could omit some, just maybe for speed, but make sure you get the extreme end. You know, it's a straight line. A straight line, you can always join points on a straight line if you have a straight rule. But you can as well do for all of the points to make your, if you are very fast, no problem. But I omitted some point just to increase my speed.
How
Is
would I
that
know the
clear?
how would I know the one to omit?
Okay, please don't omit anything. Just use the values given. Okay. The idea is, if I know the extreme ends, okay, let me show you the graph. I have the graph here. Now look at the graph. If I use the value, let's say when it was -3, this is what I have at this point. When it was -2, this is what I have. I can omit this and this, for example, and know and find this. I can still draw a straight line. But please don't omit since it's just a simple graph, so that you don't start thinking, what should I omit? Just do everything. So as you can see, even on the graph I drew, there are points on it. So you just use a straight edge and draw the line. Is that clear?
Yes, my it's clear. Another one is the
Okay.
y-axis. The y you got. I'm trying to get it
Yes.
out.
Okay. Okay. You didn't get the values.
Yes, I didn't get -5.
Okay. When x is -4, you have -4 times 2 gives you -8. -8 plus 3 gives you negative 5. Is that clear?
Okay, ma.
So is it clear
Yes.
now?
We're just adding the -8 and 3 only without the
Yes.
x.
If this is confusing you, just pick this, y equal to 2x plus 3. When x is negative 4, what will you have? 2 times negative 4 plus 3. 2 times negative 4 gives you negative 8 plus 3. So it's the same thing we are doing. This gives you negative 5. Then go again for the next one when x. So this table
I
is just like
understand, ma.
it's like a compact way of doing everything. But if you don't get that, you can go the other way, which is also very correct. So they now said that what? Use your graph to find the root of this. Now, most likely, anytime they require you to draw two graphs on the same graph sheet, they will definitely ask you for the point of intersection of the graphs. So if you look at it, the equation we have been solving is 2x squared minus x minus 2. So we have been solving, let me write that down, 2x squared minus x minus 2. But now they want us to find the root of this equation, 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. It is quite different from this. From our previous class yesterday, we know that if they just ask us for the root of this equation, is just to go to the graph. We look at the graph. Where does it cut the x-axis? At that point, that will be the root of this equation. So we just take these 2 points, here and here, and then we'll read the values. That was what we did yesterday. But in this particular example, they were not asking us for the root of equation for the curve. They were asking us for the root of equation for this other graph. So what do? If you look at it, since you have been told you are to plot this, just equate the two equations. If we equate the two equations, we have 2x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 2x plus 3. So if we collect like terms, so you are equating the graph, the curve, and the straight line. If we collect like terms, we'll have 2x squared minus x. When 2x crosses, it becomes negative, and then you have negative 2. When 3 crosses, it also becomes negative. So if you simplify this, you have 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equal to 0, which is exactly what they asked us to find the solution for. So what does that mean? To find the solution for this graph, we are just picking where does the curve and the straight line intersect. The 2 points where they intersect is what we pick as the root of this equation. Is this clear?
Yes, ma. Is it okay? The straight
Yes.
line and the original equation, that is what was equated together to get this
Yes,
2x.
so I just told you how this was gotten. If you equate both of them here and collect like terms, you get this equation we are being asked to find the root. Remember yesterday we were saying, what does it mean when they say find the root? Just find the values when that equation is solved. If it was just a quadratic equation, you use either the formula method, completing the square, or factorization. So the value you get when you solve a quadratic equation is what we call the root. But now in this case, the value for this quadratic equation from the graph will just be where the line and the curve intersect each other. Is that clear?
Yes, ma.
Okay, so if we look at our graph, to get where they intersect each other, if you see I try to trace it out, the curve and the line intersect at 2 points. So the first one, if you look at this region, this is just exactly -1. Then if you look at this is how many lines after 2. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines after 2. So that will be like 2.5 at this point. If you trace it down 5 lines after 2, that's like 2.5. So the root of that equation is what? Negative 1 or 2.5. So that's the answer. So you are not expected to go and solve algebraically. You are expected to get it from your graph. Just locate those points where they intersect and trace it down, get the x value. Remember, when we talk about root of an equation, we are talking about the x values. So is this clear?
Yes, ma.
Okay. Something I want to also raise. Sometimes the question may not even ask you to plot this. They may not tell you to plot this. The question will just come and say, find the root of this equation. So in a situation like that, when you are not even told what to plot, what you do is this. Pick the initial equation. Remember, what's the initial equation? 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. Try to, no, not minus 3x. Sorry. The initial equation was what?
2x squared minus x minus 2.
2x squared, yes, thank you, minus x minus 2 equals 0. So this is the initial equation. So sometimes, like I said, nobody will tell you about this. This will be omitted. They'll just tell you, use the graph to find the root of this. What do? Try to now write this in terms of this. To write this in terms of this, the 2x squared are the same. So I pick 2x squared. But here I have negative 3x. Why here I have negative x? How do I get negative? From negative x, how do I get negative 3x? I get that by what? From negative x, how do I get to negative 3x? I will have to add what? Are we together?
Yes, ma, we are. Repeat your question.
Okay, I said I have negative x. What do I need to add, or what do I need to subtract from negative x to get to 3x? Do we get me?
Yes, ma.
What do I need to add? I have
Minus
negative.
2x.
I needed to add what? Negative 2x, so that it gives me what?
Minus
Negative x,
3x.
negative 2x gives me negative. So,
3x.
and also I have negative 2 here. What do I need to add to get to 5?
Minus 3.
Minus 3. Okay? But I can do it this way. Maybe let me do it this other way. From this, how do I get back to the equation I have? I have 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 is equal to 0. What do I need to do to get back here? I needed to add what? From minus 3, how do I get to negative x? I think this is the right way of saying it.
Plus minus 2.
I add 2x, right? So if I do it this way, 2x squared minus 3x. If I add 2x to this, I will get back to what? Negative x. But remember, this is supposed to be what? An equality. So if I'm adding 2x here, I will have to add 2x here to maintain equality. Then for minus 5, how do I get to minus 2? I add what? I add positive 3. So same thing. I'll have to add positive 3 here to maintain equality, so that this becomes what? 2x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 2x plus 3. Is this clear? Hello, is this clear? If it's not clear, I can explain again. Is this
Explain
clear?
it,
No,
ma.
ma.
Explain.
No, ma.
So what was I trying to say? I say sometimes you may not be given this. So you may not even have an idea of how this was formed. So what did I say you should do? Pick this 2x squared because the only thing you have is this graph. So pick the 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals to 0 and try to write it in terms of what you have. So in terms of what you have, the 2x are the same, no problem. So you write it out, 2x squared. Now here I have negative x, but here I have negative 3x. So what do I need to do to negative 3x to give me negative x? I needed to add what? Positive 2x. Why? So that if I say negative 3x plus positive 2x, that gives me what? Negative x. Is that clear?
Yes, ma.
But remember, there is an equation here. The equation said this is equal to 0. So if I'm adding, and now I'm introducing something, I'm adding 2x on this side of the equation. For me to still maintain equality, what does that mean? I have to also add that 2x on this side to maintain equality. If they say two things are equal, if I add something on one side, I have to add that same thing on the other side to still make them equal. Is this clear?
Yes, ma.
Aha. Then same thing for negative 5. I have the number negative 5 here, but the number I have here is negative 2. So from negative 5, what do I need to do to negative 5 to get to negative 2? I have to add 3. Remember again, the equations are equal. If I add 3 on one side, I also have to add 3 on the other side. So that when I simplify this first equation, what will it now give me? 2x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to, when I simplify this, what do I have? 2x plus 3. So what does that mean? I have broken this down to form this relationship. So what does that mean? That means for this curve, for this quadratic equation, I needed to plot this graph, and wherever they intersect themselves, that is the solution. So why am I giving this? Like I said, some cases they will not tell you, first of all, plot y is equal to 2x plus 3. You are the one to say, okay, I already have this curve. What do I need? I need this straight line so that I look for where are they both equal. Those 2 points, if it's 2 points, those 2 points gives me the solution to the graph. Is this clear?
Yes, ma. It's clear.
Okay. So then finally says, the question says, range of value of x for which this curve is less than 0. What does that mean? If you remember when we're doing inequality, when they say a curve, this is how our curve is a U-shaped graph. When they say for what range of value is the curve less than 0, you are looking at what part of the curve is below the x-axis. Now for a U-shaped graph this way, we know that the part below the x-axis is this part because this is the x-axis. Below it is this part. If they say which part is above, what parts are above? Is this part and this part. But the part, what does that mean? Any number I pick between here, the y value will always be below. That's what they are asking. What x values that when I pick, the y values will be below the y-axis, will be below 0. That's what it means. So that means if I can get this point where it touches where it cuts my x-axis, and this point where it cuts my x-axis, then the x value should be between that range. Is this clear?
Please, ma. Explain
Yes,
again.
ma.
Okay. So, and then we have that. If you look at the graph, so at that point where it cuts, so this is just the region Sorry. This is just the region where my graph is below. So, and then the numbers there is just, I think, negative 0.8 and 1 point something. 1 point, is it 3 now? Yes. So I hope this is clear, right? We can move on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
How do now? Is it
Yes,
is the
ma'am.
question requesting that I will write out the number that is below?
Yes, you just
How will
write
it be
the
answered?
range. So how do you write the range? Now at this value, it is negative at this point. That's what? Negative 0.8. So the x value should be bigger than, or x value bigger than or equal to negative 0.8, but what? Less than 0.1, 1.8, 1.3. If you look at it at this point, this is 1.3. So any x value you pick within this range, you will be below this graph. Is it clear? So this is what you are supposed to write as your answer, the range. Remember when they say range, you can't write out all the x values. It's not possible. So they are talking about a range. So this is what you write. Any x value you pick between these two values, you will definitely be below the graph. If they had said above the graph, of course, at this point, any x value I pick, for example, if I pick x value of negative 2, the y value is already above. So any x value that is bigger than that one will now be bigger than negative 0.8, or any x value bigger than 1.3, because if I pick 2, same thing, I'm above here. So, but the only part below is just this region. So, which is this? Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So we move. So question 4, another example says what? Using the scale of 2 centimeter to 1 unit. First of all, copy and complete. We know how to copy and complete. Then using the scale of 2 centimeter to 1 unit on the x-axis and 2 centimeter to 5 units on the y-axis, draw the graph of that function. Now look at it, it was the same function. So once you input your value, I believe we know how to solve to get the value. So for this question, that's not my focus. We already know how to solve to get the value. So once you get the values, you impute it correctly, then you go and plot. In this case now, they say 2 centimeter to 1 unit on the x-axis, 2 centimeter to 5 units on the y-axis. Okay, I think the scale is the same. But now look at the range of value. So please always stick with the range of value they give you, negative 3 to 4. So, and that's what is obviously on the for the x values. So the question now goes and says what? Find the root of the equation for that graph. So remember we said the roots are just where it cuts the x-axis. So if you can look at the graph we have here, the root will just be, yes, who can tell me reading from the graph? I think this is a little bit clear. So what are the roots? If you look at this, I think it's clear. You can see. Remember, this is 10 lines represent, on the x-axis, 10 lines represent 1 unit. So one line is just 0.1. So each line is 0.1. Yes?
Minus 1 and 2.7.
Are you sure this is
Minus
minus 1?
0.9.
Good. Minus 0.9 is a one line before minus 1. So I know it's not too clear, but it's manageable. And then 2 point what? Do we agree with 2.7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's more like 2.6 at this
Yeah,
point.
2.6.
So please don't try to use some. I believe we won't cheat during the exam. So pick what you have in your graph, because the person that is definitely going to mark is definitely going to check. So you just pick what is in your graph, because they give some 0 point errors, so that even if your value is not exactly what it should be, there's a chance that, okay, if you are within a particular range, you are still correct. So don't try to copy what is not what you got from your graph. So face your own graph and pick the value because it will definitely be checked. So then the B part of that question says estimate the minimum value of y. Remember yesterday, like we said, for the graph, since it's a U-shaped graph, they have to talk about minimum value. Minimum value is that lowest value of your graph. So once you have a U-shaped graph, at that point where the graph turns, at the turning point, you get the minimum value. You trace out the y value. So minimum value is always the y value. So like we said, so from looking at our graph, you could just even look at the graph. From the graph, where is the, okay, I think I showed that in the second one. Yes, this is clearer. So where is that lowest point of my graph? If I trace it out, if you see, I try to trace it out. At the lowest point, I traced out the y value to have 9. Okay, or yesterday I was showing you how to locate the minimum value. That can even help you in also plotting. We talked about the line of symmetry. And we say, how do you get the line of symmetry? I gave you the formula yesterday. So in some questions, they will even say include the line of symmetry. I told you the line of symmetry is an equation in terms of x for the kind of graph you'll be asked to plot. So the formula is minus b over 2a. So from this graph, my b is -5. So this is equal to minus -5 over 2 times a, which is 3. So you have this to be minus +5 over 6. I think what's +5 over 6? That's is it 0.8 something, 83 or so. So at that point where x is 0.83, if you trace it, each line is 0.1. So 0.83 will be somewhere at this point, because if you count it, this is 0.8. So 83 should be somewhere a little bit into that. If you trace it downward, at that point, get the y value. No, this is too much. So the y value should be exactly at 9 based on my graph. So please stick with your own graph. If yours, when you plot it, is not up to 9, write what you have because it will be checked. So is this clear? So the minimum value is y equal is just -9 for this my own graph. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am. You said the
Okay.
minimum value is the highest value of y.
The lowest, minimum, from the word minimum means the lowest value of y. In this graph now, you can't be asked for the maximum value. Why? Because it keeps going this way. If you continue, the graph keeps going endlessly. But one thing we can know from this graph is the minimum, the lowest point of the graph. If it's an N-shaped graph, that's when A is negative. They cannot ask you for minimum value because it keeps going down. It keeps going down. It doesn't have an end. That's why they give you a range, because the graph keeps going. So, but when you have an N-shaped graph, what they can ask for is the maximum. So anytime question says find maximum value for your exam, know that your graph will look like this. If they say find minimum value, know that you are plotting a U-shaped graph. So if in case you make a mistake and your graph is looking somehow, then you should know you have made a mistake.
Please, ma'am.
Is that clear?
How did you
Yes.
substitute the minus b and a from which of the number?
Okay. Remember yesterday we said every quadratic equation can be written as what? Ax squared plus bx plus c. So that x is equal to negative b over 2a is the equation for the line of symmetry. Yesterday we said that the line of symmetry is a line that divides your graph into two equal parts. So at that point where that line of symmetry touches your graph, trace the y value. That is your minimum value. Okay? So how did we substitute it? This is minus, my b value is the coefficient of x. Here the coefficient of x is a -5. But remember in the formula there is a minus already. Then over 2, your a is the coefficient of x squared, which is 3. Minus times minus gives you positive 5/6, which gives you 0.83. Is this clear now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So for solving of this is just for you to know exactly where the minimum should be. But like I said, in some questions, they will say draw the line of symmetry on your graph. So if a question like that is asked, it's expected that we should see a line going this way, maybe something like this. So you draw a dotted line on where that, sorry, I'm not using a ruler, so it may not be something like this. So at that point, this is halfway to into the curve. This is also halfway into the curve. Then the last part of the question, which is very important, talks about gradient of a curve. Now, when we did straight line, we know that the gradient of a straight line is the same. You can find the gradient of any straight line by picking any 2 points on that line. If you remember, the formula of gradient of a straight line is given as the gradient or the slope is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So if I pick this point, let's say this is my x1, y1, and I pick another point, say x2, y2, if I impute it in this formula, I will have the gradient of that line. So if somebody else comes and pick any other 2 different points, as long as it's the same straight line, we will always have the same gradient. So the gradient of a straight line is the same throughout. But when it comes to a curve, they can only ask you for gradient of a curve at a point. Why? Because for the points on a curve, they keep changing. For example, as we have the curve this way, the y value is decreasing and then it starts increasing. So the values change it keeps changing from point to point. So if they will ask for gradient, they will ask you gradient at a particular point. So for this question, they say we should find the gradient of the curve at x equal to 2. So what do we do when they ask for gradient of a curve? What you do is go to that point where x is 2 in this question. This is where x is 2. At that point, you trace it down until you get to the curve. So where are you on the curve? This is where you are on the curve, where x is 2. Where x is 2, when you touch the curve, you are at, is this -5? So at that point when x is 2, on that curve, we draw what we call the tangent line. Now, what is a tangent line to a curve? It is just a line that touches the curve at just one point. For example, if they had said, draw a tangent line at x equal to 0. Where is x equal to 0? Of course, this is where x is 0. Trace it until you get to the curve. This is where you get to. So draw a straight line. So you are drawing a straight line this way. Make sure it touches just that point, a straight line. So use a straight edge. If they are said, draw find the tangent to the curve at -2. Where is -2 on the x-axis? Here. Where does that point touch the graph? If you trace it, this is the point where it touched the graph. What to do? Draw a tangent line. So use your straight edge. Make sure you draw a straight line very close to that point, but make sure it only touch that point. It shouldn't enter into the curve. It should just be by the side of the curve, touching only that one point. So, of course, you draw the straight line at once. So something like this. It shouldn't go into the curve. Then how do you now find the gradient? Once you draw the tangent line this way, then pick any 2 points on that line, use the gradient formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 and find your slope. So is this explanation clear?
Yes, ma.
Okay. So for this particular
Any
question,
2 points, including the x and y.
what did you say?
Say we should find any 2 points. Then I'm
Yes,
asking you, including the x and y.
of course, it's those 2 points you find that will give you your x1, y1, x2, y2 value. So we'll look at that using the example we have. Sorry, my screen is frozen. Okay, so what do I do? What do I do? Okay, let me see if it will come back. No. Sorry, I'm trying to see how to close it. Hello, sorry about that. Let me share my screen again. Just so the PowerPoint is back. Wow. Okay, hello everyone. Sorry, my device was misbehaving. So I believe everyone can see my screen, right? Can you see my?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for this question, we're asked to draw the tangent line at x equal to 2. So that was what I drew here, as you can see. So at x equal to 2, so you draw the line in such a way that it doesn't enter into the curve. It is just touching that point and very close to it. Then on this line now, you can pick any 2 points of your choice. But let me give you a clue. Make sure you pick so that your answer will not be too far away from what it is supposed to be. Make sure you pick that particular point as one of the points, so that even if there's error in the other point, at least you still be close to what the answer is supposed to be, in case you didn't draw the straight line properly. Like if you can look at this, initially I drew my line through this, but I had to clean it and make it closer. So because of error, try to use that point where they gave you in the question, especially if it's part of a point you had plotted earlier. So we know for when x is 2, y is -5. So if you pick that point, that will be 2 comma -5, and then you pick any other point. So pick any point that will be easy for you. Here I'll decide to pick this point, and at that point, this is 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7. So I choose 2.7. So at that point, when x is 2.7, y is 0. So I can now use those 2 points to find the gradient of my curve. So the gradient, the tangent at that point will be my y2. So I can call this x1, y1, and then this x2, y2. So that will be y2 minus y1. y1 is -5, so 0 minus -5 over 2.7 minus 2. So if I do this, minus minus becomes positive, so I have 5 divided by 0.7. So if I divide this, what will I have? What will 5 divided by 0.7 give me?
70.14.
Okay, so I have 7.14. So that is the value from the curve. Now, but how do I even know without plotting this? Because like I showed you, you could know the answer so that you know how to manipulate your way to always get the answer correct. Now, if you remember when they talk of tangent line, if you differentiate the equation, the y, if you find the y, the x of that curve, and then put the value of x at that point, that gives you the gradient of the curve at that point. So gradient has to do with differentiation when you take the first derivative of the curve. So if we differentiate, if you remember how we differentiate, if we differentiate this curve, that will be what? 3 times 2 x reduce 2 by 1 minus 5, so that's like 2 minus 1, minus 5x, 1 minus 1. Derivative of a constant is always 0, minus 0. So this becomes what? 6x minus 5. 2 minus 1 gives us 1. 1 minus 1 gives us 0, and we know that x to the power of 0 is 1. So this is what we have, 6x minus 5. But remember, you have to put in the x value that is given. So that will be 6 times 2 minus 5. So 6 times 2 is 12. 12 minus 5, that gives me 7. So that means my answer should rally around 7. So when I did the first, if you notice what I did, so knowing how to calculate this outside your graph will help you to know how to always adjust your graph. But please never do this. If they ask for this, never do this in any examination. It will be marked 0. In as much as it is correct, the question says from your graph. So if you do this, it's automatic 0. But why doing this, you can do this in your rough work to guide you to know whether you're on track. So like when I did the first one, I think I got if you notice from my graph, I had to erase and do it again. I got was it 8 point something? It was too far from what it's supposed to be. So that's why you see I had to adjust my line. But the best thing is just make sure the line is very close to the point. It doesn't cut into the graph. It's just very close. Then pick any 2 points. So that's why I say pick the point given in the question, then pick any other point. So that even if you make a mistake, the error will not be much. So is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then for this question, I won't draw, just to explain some things. So the main graph here is 3 sine y is equal to 3 sine 2x. So how to form the table of value? Just use the angles. For the first one, when x is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, sine 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0. Same thing, 15. Put in the value 15 here, you have 2 times 15, that gives you 30. So you find what is 3 sine 30. You write the value. So I think I have this. So 3 times sine 30 gives you 1.5. So as you see in the given values, they are put to 1 decimal place. So every other of your answers should be in 1 decimal place. For if you punch your calculator and you have more than 1 decimal place, approximate to put it to 1 decimal place. So for the scale, you have to use 2 centimeters to 15 units. So you count in terms of 15ths in the x-axis and then in the y-axis in terms of 1. So you follow the scale given. Then the part that interests me is here. They now said use the graph to find the set of this. So what were you to do? Remember the graph given is what? Y is equal to 3 sine 2x. But what did they say you should find now? 3 sine 2x plus 2 equal to 0. So like we said, what do you do? From here, how do you get back to the equation we want? What do you need to do? This equation just had 3 sine 2x. It doesn't have this positive 2. So what do we do? It's like saying take positive 2 to the other side or subtract positive 2 from both sides. If you subtract positive 2, what will that give you? 3 sine 2x is equal to negative 2. So what does that mean? On your graph, go and look for where what? Y is negative 2. Remember that first graph, we had something like x plus, was it 3? And then we knew that this was the graph of y is equal to x plus 3, and we plotted it. So, but now this is just going to be a straight line. Y is equal to negative 2. That's a line parallel to the x-axis. So go to your graph. In as much as I didn't plot this graph, but I think it looks something like this. I think it goes something like this. So go to where x is, where y is negative 2. Where will y be negative 2? I think it's somewhere here. Where y is negative 2. Draw the line, draw a straight line through it until you touch the graph. When you touch the graph, the value you get, the x value you get when it touches the graph is what gives you the solution set of this. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then same thing if you look at the second part of this question, same way you try to rewrite the equation in terms of the first equation. The first equation given is 3 sine 2x is equal to y. This is the equation we have. So try to write this that way. What do we do? Multiply through by 2. If you multiply by 2, you have 3 sine 2x is equal to 2 times 0.25. I think that gives us what? 0.5, right? 0.5. So what does that mean? Same thing. My y value is what? 0.5, because what is here is what is here. So my y is 0.5. So same thing, go to where y is 0.5 in the graph. I said the graph looks like this. It looks like something like this. So where is y 0.5? So I think y is 0.5 somewhere here. So same thing, draw a straight line. Then what do you do? At this point, trace it down, pick the x value. At this point, trace it down, pick the x value. So for this, we have 2 values. For the first one, it only touches it at 1 point. So we just have 1 value. But for the second one, we'll have 2 values of x. So that gives us what we have. So for the first one, what we got is what? 111 degree. That is, if you trace it this way, you have that value is 111, or within that range. And then the second one, when you trace it at this point, this is your 4.5, and then at this point, this is your 85.5. So it falls within this range. So is that clear? So you can go back, I've sent the notes, you can go back and sit down and plot this by yourself. You have the answer. So these answers are not, you may not get it perfectly, but it should be close to this. It should not be more than 0.05 plus or minus 0.05, because WAEC will normally give a range such that if you are within that range, you are still good to go. So is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can go and
Uh,
try this one.
Please,
Then yes, another one. Yes, you have a question?
I was lost somewhere.
Okay, where?
Please, you did 3 sine 2x equals 0.5.
Okay, from here. Remember, the first question says use the graph to find this. We say just take 2 to the other side so that you have this y is equal to 3 sine 2x. Remember, this is the graph we plotted. So same thing here, you try to write this in terms of this. How? Multiply through by 2. If you multiply this by 2, you have what? 3 sine 2x. The 2 cancels, and then you have 2 times 0.25 gives you 0.5. So now what happens? This graph now looks like this, but now your y is 0.5. So you go on the y-axis. Where do we have 0.5? Like I said, you have the graph this way. Where do we have 0.5? Somewhere here. So trace it this way. The x value at this point was 4 point something. The x value at this point 85.5. So these are the two values. Is this clear now?
Yes, my it is.
Okay. So please try it. Try it. The answers are written there for you. I didn't plot this, but go and try plotting this yourself. Then this one says copy and complete the table. We already know how to copy and complete table. Use the scale. We already know how to use the scale. So please always use the correct scale given in the question, else you lose marks for it. Then this now says use the graph to find the solution of this. So like I said, anytime you are given an equation, try to write it in terms of the main one. So if you write this in terms of the main one, it's just to take 10 to the other side, and then you have what? 2x squared plus x minus 10 is equal to 0. So that means where y is 0, and that's just exactly how your curve look. So this is exactly this. So you are just looking at where does that graph cut the x-axis. So at that point gives you, so this find the solution is same thing as saying find the root of the equation. So you have the two values of x. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Then
Yes, ma'am.
the next part of the question says use the graph again, find the solution of this. Now if you compare this with what you have, what does that mean? Exactly, you have 2x squared plus x minus 10 minus 10. So what does that tell you? Y is exactly 2x. But the graph of y equal 2x is a straight line. It's not just, it's a straight line. So if you have the curve this way, for example, if you have the curve this way, y is equal to 2x should be a graph, a positive graph, right? So maybe it should be something like this. Maybe I shouldn't draw that line. I don't really know whether how it cuts the x-axis. But if I have my curve this way, when I plot this graph 2x, I should have it to pass through the center self. So it should be something like this. So I have to form the table of value. When x is -5, what is y? -10. When x is -4, what is 2x. I have it. So that gives me this line. So the point at which this line, we have done something like this, the point at which this line cuts the curve, the values we get, the values of x we get at that point, if maybe we needed to trace it, that gives us our solution to that equation. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am.
same thing, I didn't plot it, but please try to plot it. So when you plot the graph, the solution for that is minus 2.5 or x equal to 2. That is when you plot the graph. The graph cuts the x-axis at those 2 points, 2 and minus 2.5. Then when you plot this including, it cuts it at, when you trace the x value, that gives you 2.5 and minus 2. So this should be like minus 2 and here should give you 2.5. So it depends on how it goes. So these last two questions, please try to plot them yourselves. The answers are there. You can see the answers yourself. So you may not get exactly these values, but you should be within 0.1 to 0.5 plus or minus difference. So if your work is above that, then you know you made a mistake and needed to correct that. So okay, any question before we end the class now? Any question?
No question.
Okay. So I believe by now you have the notes. So I wish all of you success. May God help you. You will write your exam and pass in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 I wish all of you success. All right.
Amen.
Bye. Yes, bye.